So I work at a school. And when I tell people that this school has an environmental mission, they often think of lush green fields and sprawling trees and grassy nooks. But places like that are not exactly easy to come by in Chicago's industrial Southwest side. So when my colleagues and I showed up to find this place for our new school, we showed up at a barrel factory. And adjacent to the barrel factory was an asphalt parking lot next to the doors. And there we were looking at our new home. And there was this invitation for us to reimagine this thing called school. And we thought it was perfect. Yesterday, as spring finally descended on Chicago, I noticed something that a sight that perhaps I've seen 100 times before. As I walked into the parking lot, past the orange traffic cones, I noticed two of our girls peeking at me from around the corner. There, Rosie was dipping her feet tentatively in a puddle, and Daisy was digging in the soil. And as I stopped and witnessed how Rosie and Daisy used their senses to interact and to explore and to find their way, I realized how deeply nature is connected to play. And I realized how play, in some ways, how nature really dictates the way that we play. You see, for Rosie and Daisy, there isn't a defined time for play. It doesn't stop after 20 minutes or at the blow of the whistle. Play doesn't necessarily only happen on a playground. Play isn't recess. Rather, play transcends this time and space. Play isn't an activity, play is a method. Play isn't what we do, play is how we do it. And Rosie and Daisy have caused me to wonder how we can make play a part of being and part of teaching and part of learning, and how we can develop these deep connections to nature through play and through exploration. If you strolled across our prized piece of asphalt, you'd notice a few other things. Yes, there's a worn-out set of monkey bars, but there's also a greenhouse and a wind turbine and a solar energy learning lab positioned among garden boxes, rain barrels, and compost bins. This is where we play, and this is where we learn. You see, our garden boxes aren't mere structures for growing plants, but our tea garden box, for example, is a science lesson. It's a literacy class. It's a geography teacher. It's a math study and exploration. You know, the students explore things like photosynthesis and pollination, multiplication and graphing, vocabulary, and even Japanese culture. On a typical day at school, our students embark on adventures and field trips and explorations in the rain, in the snow, and in the sunshine. We look for bugs and we collect natural objects. We sink our hands deep into the soil. We plant seeds and we measure rainwater. We harvest vegetables for lunch. We create maps of our neighborhood, count trees all the way down the block, and we examine with awe the colors of the birds. We smell the lemongrass coming from our tea garden, and we taste the sweet peas fresh off the vine. We hear the bees buzzing, and we hear those 18-wheeler trucks zooming by. We feel the fresh air tickle our faces, and we feel the dirt in between our toes. And most importantly, we ask questions. We wonder. We take risks. This is how we play. We embark on this journey of the senses. And soon, what's fascinating and what gets me excited is we begin to see this rare action. Parents become exhilarated and sometimes wonderstruck by their children's sheer determination to replace the entire front yard with Swiss chard and tomato plants. The students become fascinated with insects both outside and inside the house. And students begin to wonder why we can't have chickens in our backyards, or why we can't have vermicomposting worms residing in our kitchens too. And one by one, these parents, they join alongside their children in the journey of play. So as these students and families begin to make these local connections in our neighborhood and in our community, they begin to see how they can impact the whole wide world. You see, after collecting rainwater and measuring rainfall, suddenly caring for those halfway across the globe who lack access to clean water becomes a much more meaningful and evocative course. Critical thinking about the global origins of food and looking at our plates differently takes an interesting turn after spending a season harvesting our own organic vegetables and adopting those cows that produce the milk that ends up in our cafeteria and visiting our local farmers. Learning about endangered species and the effects on climate change in the Arctic takes on an entirely new meaning after engaging in such a deep way with our local neighborhood species. And speaking of which, if you do come to visit, you might hear something a bit peculiar emerging from the corner of our schoolyard. You see, there's 3 rescued chickens that are living in a small wooden coop on a bed of hay in the corner of our piece of asphalt. Rosie, Daisy, and Bluebell. Environmental education is experiencing the world through play. It's a process. And it all can begin on a parcel of asphalt. It's not merely about recycling bins and composting and solar panels. But sustainability is really developing this deeply rooted, playful, and intriguing love affair with the earth. It's about that spine-tingling excitement as we sink our hands into the soil. It's the marveling at the ladybug's flight path as she flutters from plant to plant. It's the delicious taste of schoolyard fresh eggs. It's the sheer beauty of an aging oak tree that has weathered the storm. And with this renewed vision of possibility, let's travel back to that piece of asphalt that makes up our schoolyard. You know, those orange traffic cones are no longer simply cones, because through the lens of play, they become hats and mountains. They become skyscrapers and tools. The monkey bars are transformed into pirate ships and moats and castles. And the asphalt itself beams as an urban agricultural space and a home to our dear feathered friends. Our school is alive with learning, and off in a corner, Daisy clucks as she nestles in for a cooling dust bath. The doors swing open to the fresh spring air, and another ordinary day at school begins, where play is the experience of taking the ordinary and making it magical. And if we can inspire this type of local engagement, no matter where we live and no matter where we learn, I think we'll begin to see a new generation of environmental stewards who are prepared to tackle the vast array of global challenges that lie ahead. So, as we often conclude with our students, I'd like to leave you with a question. What can happen when we make play possible? Thank you.